Soos genoem gesels ek vanoggend met Gary Scallan en hy is die stigter van Africa Botanicals. Nou ons praat 'n bietjie oor organiese kompos. Hoe lekker is nie om jou eie kompos te kan maak nie. Gary, welcome to GROOTplaas.
Good morning, Meer. Goeiemôre almal. Van 'n lekker dag in Kaapstad.
Goeiemôre, ons almal is jaloers. Gary, let's start with, the whole concept of composting. It's such a magical process, actually. So, just what do we mean when we talk about composting and organic composting?
Composting generally is organic because we are taking organisms from around us and we are allowing them to decompose, and then we are going to take that decomposed matter and put it back into the soil. So that is the wonderful thing about organic compost, in that you can take your leftover leaves, you can take a whole lot of different material, add it together, leave it for a couple of months, and allow nature to do its thing, a bit of water, a bit of turning, and get a bit of oxygen into it. And then what you're doing is you're putting that goodness back into the soil. So therefore, it's not lost.
Yes. So when we look at composting, according to you, what are some of the key benefits of using compost and organic fertilizers, and this is over synthetic chemical fertilizers? Is there any major differences?
Mia, yes. If you look at the bags that you find at the agricultural stores of the fertilizers, essentially you're going to see little granules, and they're going to take the granules and they're going to put it over the soil, and they're hoping that the nutrients from those granules will actually go into the soil and help the plants grow. Whereas with organic and composting per se, you're adding a lot more, in that compost decomposes slowly over time, whereas your fertilizer actually kind of enters the soil pretty quickly. The most important thing, I think, for farmers and for smallholders and for your domestic gardens is how it helps the soil structure and the water holding capacities.
So when I talk about me personally, I'm very passionate about composting, and a lot of my friends also are. We do it at home, but you never really know if you're doing it right, if you're doing it perfect. So can you please take me through the steps for setting up and maintaining, I think that's the most important part, of a good, healthy, practical compost pile? Where do you start? What are the steps? And how do you know you're successful?
A very good question, Mia. There are so many different ways to compost, and it all depends on your setting. I mean, obviously, farmers and smallholders have a lot more land, and they can dig bigger pits to put the composting material. Us in smaller residential areas, you can get a couple of things from the nurseries and the garden shops. These plastic containers that can be conical, and also you can look at your worm farms. The most important thing about composting is to layer. So if you're cutting the grass, put the grass in, put it flat, and then you can add in all your kitchen scraps, but please only the vegetable scraps. I do throw in lemon peels. There are some people who say don't, but once I've squeezed the lemon, there's no more acid. So let's throw in the lemon peels. Let's throw in some chicken eggs. The eggs, the shells, obviously the shells, but really stay away from introducing any food stuff, like meat or dairy, oils or anything like that, because what that does, it attracts unwanted mice and rats, which is what you don't want, and they're going to bury themselves in there. So the most important thing is to layer. Make sure that it's not too wet but not too dry, and turn it as often as you can. And then what that does, it brings the oxygen into the bottom of it. And if you're putting your compost directly on soil or in a little place inside of the garden, you're going to find that the worms are going to crawl up.
Yeah,
they're going to eat, and you're going to find a whole lot of different insects in your compost heap. And that is the exciting part of it. In that, there's a whole microcosm of life in there. And I think that's what makes composting so rewarding. And also by turning it and getting the oxygen in, you're not going to get the smells. I've got 3 compost heaps going at the moment. I cannot smell anything. We're not attracting any rodents. And here in Cape Town, we live on sand. The sand really needs our compost.
Yeah. That's actually also a question that I'm interested in. And, you know, does it need to smell like a farm for it to be a successful compost pile? Or, well, like you say now, that doesn't have to be the scenario, right?
You know what? A very good question, Mia, because there's so much information on Google and what you can do and what you can't do, and also other search engines, of course. We're very fortunate where we are. We live near Nuruk, and we've got a couple of stables, and so I throw in a layer of horse manure. And horse manure basically is just grass that has gone through the digestive system of the horse. But the worms, for example, absolutely adore the horse manure. So then on top of so I lay it with the horse manure, and then I start adding in the kitchen scraps and other garden stuff. It's important to get the leaves in there. It's important to get a variety, because that is what's going to help the compost at the end of the day. But compost heaps generally should not smell. I know of some people who like to add in pig urine. There's a guy down the road that he believes that pig urine should go in. And also, as soon as you start adding in things like a chicken manure, that is where the smell comes in. But decomposing cabbage and lettuce and tomato, there is really no smell. We have not had a problem, not attracting flies. And that kind of indicates that you've got a healthy compost heap.
I'd like to take a minute or two just to go back to that again. If we look at materials that should be or can be included and materials that definitely should be avoided. So just make me, tell us those 2 columns. If you can just mention a few, I know if people are maybe taking some notes or so.
Let's simplify it a little bit further. Essentially, you got your layers of your browns and your layers of your greens. Your browns will be your leaves, because you normally pick up the leaves off the ground once they have fallen off the tree, so they're brown. Straw, your horse manure, that is your browns, and that is full of carbon, and that is why we have the browns. And then on top of the browns, you're putting the greens. The greens are your veggie scraps. Your greens are your peels, and that is the nitrogen aspect to the compost, which makes it exciting. And then, once you've done your greens, then you put browns back on again, and then every couple of weeks, or just get a big fork, put it down into it, just swirl it around a little bit. If you really want to, you can put your hands in there, because there's really nothing there that's going to bite. And
it's not that gross.
Frankly, you're actually you're gonna feel nature right on your fingers.
Yeah. So we recently discussed rabbit farming, and you did mention now there are certain urines you shouldn't put in. What about rabbit urine in a compost pile? Does that have any benefits?
Rabbit urine is actually going to be, I believe, going to become the next gold.
Really?
Insofar as,
okay.
I do believe it. It's a fantastic urine. And as with all the urines, I think it's important in the compost heap, it needs to be diluted. Diluted with water. Rabbit urine, you can dilute 1 to 5. People ask me, well, how do you catch the urine?
Please tell us.
In the cages, you just kind of collect it by slanting a tray underneath it, and that the urine can just drip into a container. There are many ways of doing it, but that's the simplest, because the rabbits are in the cages and the trays are underneath. And then in a normal compost heap, if you dilute it 1 to 5 with water, you can spray it on top of the compost heap. What is lovely about rabbit urine is that it has got all the nutrients. It's got the nitrogen, it's got the phosphorus, and it's got potassium, which is everything that your plants want.
Yeah.
And the additional thing about rabbit urine, which I like, if you dilute it in the 1 to 5, put it into a spray bottle, and go and spray your veggies. Go and spray areas where insects like to accumulate. They do not affect pollinators. So your bees and your good insects are great, but maybe on the cauliflowers and the cabbages, a good spray of diluted rabbit urine is certainly going to help your plant.
I love our discussion. I just need to say that. Tell me, beyond just providing nutrients, obviously, being good for plants, how else does compost and organic fertilizers, how does it improve the overall soil health of the plants and also to make the plants thrive? I think that's the biggest thing, to make it thrive.
Yeah, I think with anything organic, number one, it's sustainable. Number two, it's very friendly to the planet. Organic matter feeds so many different life. Yes. Your microbes, your soil microbes, your fungi, all the other organisms that fertilizers don't do. So. Driving along in the evening, you'll probably have lots of hochers in the past hitting your windscreen. That's because the soil was rich and the soil was full of life. Fertilizer doesn't do that. Anything organic, you're putting it back. You actually supporting a whole microbial mini planet in that soil. Yeah. And the most important thing is it absorbs the nutrients. Your fertilizers only have 3, 4 maybe minerals in them, whereas because of the different plants, the different layers, different leaves, everything has got a different type of benefit to the soil, and it adds so much more. And it also helps with a bit of mulching, helps keep the moisture levels at a good, it really helps prevent moisture, evaporation. That's what I meant.
Yeah. I think one true thing is we really, and we don't realize the value of that microorganism universe that's just doing its thing. We think about it as a pile of compost, and obviously we see the benefits of use, and if you can make it on your own or in your own back garden, it's very beneficial. But, we don't realize that little universe that's, living their life, doing their thing. It's actually so fascinating when you start digging a bit deeper and really realize what's really happening in your compost pile.
I'm absolutely with you. As I mentioned earlier, there's nothing nicer than putting your hands into the compost pile and just lifting up, and you got the different scents. I'm not going to use the word smell. It's scent.
Scents. I love that.
And you I mean, just on top of the compost, you've got these little insects I don't even know the name of, and underneath in the compost there are the red worms, which are the good worms for worm pea, and then you've got all the other insects in there, and it's an exciting journey, and also that what you're doing is incredibly friendly to the environment, and it also, I think, one thing we underestimate, how it builds the plant's resilience to pests and diseases and even drought. Yes. It's just something. It's going back to nature. It's going back to basics.
Gary, I love talking to you. We are going to catch up with each other in the coming weeks and also talk about snail farming. I'm so excited. Thank you for spending your morning with us. Have a beautiful day in Cape Town.
Thank you very much, Mia.